And hello, everyone. I'm John Ray, and I'm here with Delynn Plummer, and she is with Exponent Collaborative. Delynn, welcome. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Why don't you give everyone a sense of what you do at Exponent Collaborative?
Sure. So we're an agency that works mostly virtual with clients all over the country, large and small. And we're essentially a creative services firm that leverages a network of talent to help startups, innovators, nonprofits, large organizations and institutions launch brands, tell various stories, and essentially grow. So whether that means creating a brand identity for a startup or helping a large institution grow their enrollment or audience, kind of everything in the mix there.
And you do a lot of work with pretty technical oriented institutions. Why don't you describe a little bit of that, and then we'll get to the specific project at hand that you had to deal with.
Sure. So some of the clients that we work with are in the, let's say, healthcare space, and they're working on startups that might be on topics like gene therapy or innovative products for newborns. So on that side, the kind of the biomedical engineering side, we offer a lot of brand and marketing expertise, which is not typically their lane. They're scientists, so they're not really sure what I even mean when I talk about their branding, and they need a lot of help in that regard. And then as we kind of grow into these larger organizations, we've worked a lot with MIT, Sloan Executive Education, working a lot with faculty and academics to help explain their offerings and their courses and their research. And then somewhat more recently, the past year or two, with Harvard Global Health Institute, helping them take a lot of their data and research and get it out in the world through websites and interactive graphics and other types of media.
And the Harvard Global Health Institute specifically, you had that project really came on strong with the COVID-19 environment that we find ourselves in, the need to collect a lot of data rapidly and distribute that data, and then get it on a website where people can find it. So what was the problem that you were trying to solve for them?
Sure. Well, before the COVID outbreak, we were already engaged with them trying to create a new brand identity and a brand new website for their institute at large. And we were already in the mix with that project when the outbreak occurred, and they realized they very quickly needed to somewhat pivot. Instead of trying to get that large behemoth website up to capture their data, we spun out a smaller website, and one that we could drive all the media outlets to, as well as the general public, that would help translate some of the hospital capacity issues that the country was facing at the time of the outbreak and continues to face, unfortunately. And that's when I needed to engage a team to help me very quickly, like in a matter of days back in March, figure out how we could get some sort of interactive graphic up online that was based on data that was changing by the hour.
Wow. So you don't have that kind of web development expertise in-house. You farm that out. You decided to engage Polyglot Labs. What was the obstacle that might have made you think twice about engaging Polyglot? I mean, why? What was it there that made you think maybe not them, maybe someone else?
Well, actually, it was sort of the reverse. I had a team that I'd been working with for a year, and the question really was, can I continue to engage that team to help me execute on this? And there were a variety of factors that made me think, you know what, I don't have the team that I've been working with, I don't think is up to this challenge. I don't necessarily feel like they can bring some of the development chops to this. And I also knew that time was of the essence, and we didn't have the ability, time, bandwidth to have to translate everything through multiple channels. I just needed a team that I can work directly with that could come up with solutions that would work and work quickly. And I had been introduced to Polyglot just moments before all of this happened, and I understood their capabilities, and I had always been really impressed with what they were able to do and the kind of the way that they work and the authenticity that they bring to the projects and the way they kind of cut through a lot of the other obstacles that agencies create at the start of a project. I knew I could sort of call them and say, listen, we've got 6 days and a lot of data, and it's really important. So if you're able, I really need you to jump in like today. And they did.
And what did you find? I mean, you went to them because of their speed, because of their flexibility. Those are some of the things I heard, but what did you find in the midst of all that, getting that project, getting engaged with them on that project? What did you find that maybe surprised you pleasantly that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason I went to them too, aside from just speed and flexibility, was actually just the development acumen that they have. And I knew that they could pull something together that was custom, but not so from scratch that we were going to be saddled with a really burdensome development project. I knew that they could lean on some of the tools that they had already previously created and kind of leverage those and customize it in a way that would work for this audience. So I wasn't necessarily surprised by the fact that they did it, because that's why I chose them. But I guess I was pleasantly, I guess I was just delighted in general that it managed to manifest so quickly and with so there really wasn't a lot of downtime. There weren't a lot of errors or technical glitches. Like even when you have really big, powerful development teams involved, there's usually something that goes awry in the first day or two, and things are crashing and things are wonky. And we really never had any of those problems. Everything was very smooth. Certainly there were iterations to make because we changed some of the design intentionally, and they were able to adjust to those changes as well. So I guess I was just impressed with how everything met the expectation that I actually had, which tends not to be the case in the real world generally. Usually there are a few more hiccups and disappointments. So especially given how critical March was to getting that data out. And of course, at the time, I thought that we also had to hurry because this project wouldn't be relevant in a month or two. And unfortunately, I was super wrong. The outbreak continues and the data is still super relevant. The site is so well trafficked that I had to move it to a private server because we were getting so many views and so much use. And all throughout that time, there's never been any downtime, any glitches. And that was just the first project that I engaged Polyglot on for this client. I can talk a little bit about the other half of the project, which just wrapped up. So I mentioned at the start of this that at the time we had this larger website for the actual institute that we were trying to complete. And we had just hit a pretty significant impasse. Partly the client was very busy, obviously, with everything that was going on with COVID. And so we weren't able to get the content when we wanted it. But honestly, on our end, what had been designed by a different team was so challenging that I will be honest, before I had been introduced to Polyglot, I was trying to find a firm to take it over, and no one would touch it. No one wanted this project. And I was getting like a little bit terrified and a little bit desperate. I really needed to turn it over to a team that could take it across the finish line. And so once Polyglot had masterfully taken care of this globalepidemics.org website, where that database and map lives, I said, if you would be willing to go on another journey with me, I would so appreciate it. Here's this complete mess. It looks, it's intended to look quite beautiful and function quite well. And unfortunately, that's not the reality when you get into the back end. So I provided them some instruction, the credentials that they needed. And within 2 weeks, they transformed the back end of that site into something that the client can use, that I can use, that matches the design mock-up that we wanted, that looks really unique. I think it's a really special site, and the client was absolutely thrilled. We were able to launch that a couple of weeks ago, and now that site is also receiving an enormous amount of traffic. And it's been live for several weeks, and there have been no hiccups, no glitches, no concerns other than needing to move it to a private server as well, because half the country seems to be on it at the same time. So I was just so delighted. It is not common to be able to turn a project over to someone else midstream and have it go well, or even for them to be willing to do it. But given the need here, the importance of the project, the profile of the client, I think they were willing to take that risk, and they just did a tremendous job putting that site, righting the ship, and putting that site into the place it needed to be at in order to launch. So I was relieved and thrilled.
It sounds like you would recommend Polyglot.
You think? Yeah, is that what's coming across?
I think that's what I heard in this.
Yes, I would recommend their team highly for. Really, these projects were very different from each other. One was very custom and really had a lot to do with development and data and interfaces and dashboards, and then the other was WordPress. So, like, basically, very different needs and skill sets were required for those two projects. And they pulled both off extremely well.
And it sounds like what you're describing is, I mean, you're really counting on outside firms to handle this for you on behalf of your client. And you were kind of in a box with another, sounds like a much bigger organization. We don't need to get into the details, but when you're talking about a big development team, that sounds what it sounds like. And you obviously had comfort enough with Polyglot, you know, a smaller team based here in Georgia, to take that project away from that much bigger organization and put it in their lap and say, hey, help, please fix this.
Yeah, I mean, I had originally outsourced the project overseas because it was a large undertaking on a small budget. And I had always wanted to work with a local firm, but really hadn't found anybody who could do what Polyglot could do. So once I learned of their capabilities and the fact that they're here in Georgia, not that far from me, that was just an enormous win for me and my business. You're right. I do a lot of what I do. I build the relationships with the client. I guide them on content and process and planning, and what I try and help them figure out what they need. And then I reach out to my ecosystem to find the right talent. And I was reaching and not being able to find that perfect team that could deliver things that were complicated or custom or required a tight deadline without a ton of explanation. I had been really grasping for years to find a team that could do that for me. And lo and behold, a local team was actually there all that time, and no one had introduced them to me yet. So I'm relieved to finally meet them.
Well, Delynn, this has been great. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. Is there anything else you'd like to add to what you've already said about your experience with Polyglot?
I guess the one part I just haven't mentioned, which to me is really important because it's part of my ethos too, is they're just really nice people to work with. They're fair and they're reasonable and they're thoughtful. And they, again, like I may have mentioned with other agencies, there tend to be a lot of hurdles to even get a project off the ground. And I just feel like they're very real. And you can have a thoughtful, real conversation about the project with them and not feel like you're going around in circles. So to me, that's very valuable because that's how I run my business as well. It's always about the people. It's always about relationships, even more than process, and sometimes even more than product. It's really about people. So I appreciate that in them as well.
That's great. Delynn Plummer has been with us with Exponent Collaborative. Delynn, thanks so much.
Thank you.